What is Syntex? Yes. Thank you for the time, and happy to share with you what I've been spending, gosh, the last year and a half working on. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Let's do this. I'm going to turn off video just because, but I am here. Hello. And let's share the screen. So I'm going to throw a bunch of information at you guys, and then we're going to, demo as much as we can in the time that we have together this morning. But just wanted to take some time to, share with you what Syntex is, what happened to Project Cortex, what's going on. So I thought it'd be helpful, not knowing where everybody is in their journey learning about this new product add-on, to just give you some framing and help you understand where this sits in the broader, what is now we kind of refer to internally as the Project Cortex initiative, because the evolution of it really has been, we were working on what initially was going to be just one larger product, and then that's gone through a couple of iterations and evolutions. And while there'll be a lot of connection between the various pieces that the larger team is working on, there really started to evolve a very different set of capabilities that, while they complemented one another, were also targeting different use cases and in some cases different members of an organization. And so Syntex is really around, focusing on the content services space and how we can evolve that, and how we can build on what's already a world-class content services product with SharePoint, which we all, use and love, and how we can do more with it. Thing we continue to hear from you guys and our TAP customers and at conferences is just the challenge of, with all the data that we're trying to manage in our SharePoint tenants and libraries, and just, taking advantage of all the content management capabilities that we provide there with, with libraries and with library views and content types, and taking advantage of managed metadata, that it's still hard, to make sure that things are tagged at all, but also consistently tagged. And that metadata is really such a cornerstone of a really rock solid content management system, because it can really help in so many ways. A lot of how we look at it, I always refer to like these sort of three solution pillars. You have good metadata, it's going to help in your search retrieval. It's going to help with your downstream business processes. Once you have that metadata, you can do something with Power Automate, let's say, to orchestrate some type of automated flow. And then, of course, with content governance, we've done a lot of work in the last couple of years, working really closely with the security and compliance folks to make sure that, we're tying into the information protection experience. And we saw opportunities there to kind of automate that for consistency and to make it happen faster. So really excited about some of that work, which I'll talk about in a second. And the other thing, too, is that we commissioned a study during this last year while we were working on this, and really just saw a lot of not just the pain points that folks like you were reporting to us, but also just the opportunity to really optimize savings, honestly, move people to higher productivity savings, get productivity savings and move people onto higher tasks, because let's admit it, none of us like to manually tag metadata and files that we're hosting. So we saw opportunities to really move into that space. And so where Cortex really started was we were looking at sort of across the spectrum. And I wanted to bring up this slide real quick just to kind of show how not the evolution, but kind of where we're at the moment is Project Cortex we now have two separate products. We have like sort of the knowledge curation and discovery. This is work that you've heard us talk about at conferences, and this is where we mine your existing content to help make connections and identify topics and connect experts with the content. And then you can curate that, and that really helps build up that knowledge base. The other side of it is the Syntex side, where you have all that content. How can we help you with AI to better organize that information? And so it's a little bit more intentional, a little bit more human first. And really where that landed was just, how can we give you an easy way to build AI app capabilities to better automate the classification of your content and the extraction of metadata from that? So when we think about Syntex, we look at it in kind of a couple of different views, but really it boils down to, in addition to kind of like that search and business automation and compliance, is really just that. How can we help you classify it, find the content, classify it, and then extract the metadata from it? And then with that metadata, you can then start to do wonderful things with it. And so a lot of the capability was, how do we start to really build and provide you with those great AI app integrations to make that happen? And one of the sort of breakthrough opportunities here with Syntex is that our AI teams have just been building some very innovative AI capabilities that we have integrated into the product. And I just point this out because this is for those of you who are familiar with traditional machine learning. It's very powerful, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of training. It's typically a bit opaque. You need typically large training sets, and you have to label a bunch of stuff and then kind of let the system chew on it for a while, and then you have to review the results. And it's sort of a bit more laborious back and forth labeling effort to get the model to a place where it's doing what you need it to do. And what we do with Syntex is we're taking advantage of a technique in AI called machine teaching. And what's powerful about this is it kind of puts the human first and at the center of the equation, and allows you to work with a smaller sample set, do a limited amount of labeling, and then review those results more real time. And in effect, kind of shorten that training process and get to a point where you can go, great, I can now very quickly and easily train a model to understand that this is a contract and this is not. And once I have that contract, then do some additional training to say, I want you to identify certain entities from that contract, and then write that stuff out to a SharePoint library. And so just to kind of put this in frame, because you've probably also heard, if you've attended, listened to any of the talks, I was going to say attended, we have all been in quarantine for too long. So listen to any of the talks that we have given in the last year. We kind of see this as a bit of a spectrum, and there's different capabilities that we provide in this release of Syntex. Obviously, on the far left, you have just sort of what we have today, the manual ability, to leverage metadata and tag content and, set up content types and all that. And I will just use that opportunity to make a plug that as a part of this effort, as many of you know, we really doubled down in reinvesting in the managed metadata service. And a lot of that work has gone out already and is available to you. There are some additional enhancements. We're going to continue to build on the managed metadata service and invest there. And some of those investments are reflected in the Syntex product, but there will be also additional improvements made to the service itself. Moving to the right real quickly, we're also looking at taking advantage of some of the AI work that we've been doing internally to just sort of automatically detect things and automatically tag things. And so our first foray into this, which will be coming out later this year, is object detection. So this will be the ability to take things like image files and automatically detect objects in those files and effectively write those out as tags. And so you can pretty much do that with, that's a little bit more black box. That's largely just taking advantage of these sort of pre-built, pre-trained models, and you're just essentially lighting them up. And in this case, they're detecting image files. We're looking at extending that to, just more text analytics, where imagine just being able to upload a document and have it automatically extract key phrases using the Azure Cognitive Service APIs. And so that's work that's still in development, but certainly a really neat area when you don't need to do a bunch of customization. You just need to get some tags out to maybe improve search, or at least just to drive some general processes without a lot of customization. But if you have specific customizations or specific entities that you want to extract from your documents, then it's best to, go into the custom space. And that's really where Syntex shines. And just to be clear, we provide two different technologies here. These are using two different underlying AI APIs. The first one is form processing. And the form processing, quite simply, is using the form recognizer API that's been integrated into AI Builder, which is a new Power Platform service. And so what you can do is we've partnered with them and built an experience with Syntex that essentially lights up an option to allow you on a library to initiate a form processing training exercise in AI Builder and build that model, and then apply that model directly to that library. And what we do is we do all the heavy lifting for you in terms of, as you train the model, then what we're going to do is take that model, we're going to, put it into a Power Automate flow, write everything back to the library, do all the setup for you. So it's a pretty seamless experience. And when you're done, your model is ready to go. The document understanding ones, those are built on some different technology. For those of you who are familiar with the work that we've been doing in the AI space, this is working off of the Lewis APIs. And what this is doing is this is more tightly integrated into SharePoint. And this allows you to build models in a new site template called the Content Center. And with that, and I'll show you that in a second. And what you can do with that Content Center is we provide a training experience that allows you to effectively build these models. And these are a little bit different because they're being centrally created and managed in the Content Center. The difference here is that these models can be applied to multiple libraries. And they can also be reused. You can apply multiple ones to the same library. So they have a little bit more flexibility right now in their usage. And then the difference between the two is what kind of content you're needing to classify and extract information from. And we recognize that this is a bit of a cognitive load, and you might say, well, Sean, I need to do something that's right in the middle. And we are aware that we're working to, kind of fill that gap. But right now, we really wanted to make sure that we were giving you guys options and giving you that flexibility to tackle and address and build models on these different types of content. And so you'll see there on the left with the document understanding, it really, again, built in the Content Center. And this is great for unstructured file formats. So, Office files, PDF, things where you have a lot of just text, but you have some consistency. Like in that case, you'll see that service agreement. So if you've got like a contract that has a lot of text and you want to extract information from that, like maybe the start date or what the, who the vendor is or what the terms of agreement are. You can extract those clauses because they're sort of like, loosely, found in the paragraphs themselves. Whereas the form processing, using the form recognizer API in AI Builder, that one's a little bit more structured. That one's better for, digital forms and invoices, things where you have a real clear, more structured format where you have a clear key value pair. And what you want to do is say, hey, I want to pull the date value out of the date field in this purchase order, or get the total out of the invoice. And that one is, and that one works specifically on PDFs and JPEGs and PNGs. There's so you can you can use scanned files to train those models. People have asked about what the timeline is for support for, say, Word and other types of Office formats there. And it's things that the AI Builder team is looking at, but not available yet at this time. So given the fact that these are like two different experiences, we did try to make them, as coherent as, and aligned as possible in terms of the experience. The actual UX is very different, but the intent is the same. You effectively have to either go to the library where you want to train and make the model, in the case of form processing, or go to the Content Center experience, and then go through a model training exercise. And they're both very similar in that regard, where you're, again, working on a very small set of files. In the case of form processing, for those of you who haven't tried that out, probably won't have time to demo that fully today, but the idea there is, similar in that you use a small set of files, and what the system is going to do is it's going to analyze those files, and then it's going to identify specific information. You now have the ability to highlight undetected fields, so if it missed that date or that invoice total, you can go and train them all to say, hey, you missed this. Let me highlight it for you and walk through that training. And again, since you're only, training it on a half a dozen files, it's a much easier labeling and training exercise, certainly quicker. And then once you're done, typically, when you're done with an AI Builder model, you would go and use it and reference it in a Power Automate flow that you would build, or even kick out to a Power App canvas and build it into an app. But what we've done is when you initiate this process from Syntex, from a SharePoint library, what we're going to do is we're going to trigger instantiation of a special Power Automate flow, populate it with the model, all your library information, and then kick you back to the library with everything configured. And then similarly with the doc understanding models, when you're done with that model training, you can go ahead and apply it to libraries. And then the end result on the far right is that you now have the ability at runtime to upload files. And then that will trigger the models to be executed to go and process those files and attempt to classify them and extract metadata from them. And one of the things I'll show you in a second, we're going to jump to demo in a second. I just want to give you guys some more framing just so you understand all the various pieces that are at work here, is we also do some work to those libraries. So there's a bunch of things that happen with those libraries when you apply these models to them. We wanted to make sure that users are aware that, hey, there are models applied to this library. And at runtime, we give you a notification banner that lets you know that some additional processing is happening. We also have integrated panel detail experience, so you can kind of open up a panel and see what model or models are applied to that library. And then if you are the owner of those models, you can jump directly into an edit experience if you need to work with those models. And then real quickly, we're probably not going to talk much about this more today, but I will call out that first one around taxonomy extractors. There are some additional metadata capabilities that, with Project Cortex at large, but more specifically with Syntex currently, is the ability to use manage metadata fields when you're training extractors for your document understanding models. This is super cool. I'll show this. I'll talk a little bit more about that one in a second. And then there's some additional just things that we did in the manage metadata service itself from an administrative capability. The term store reports in the new import format is really just to start giving you more flexibility around working with third-party taxonomies to build out your own in terms of supporting SCOS format, and then also giving you some preliminary analytics, which we're going to continue to build on to give you more insights into how your term sets are being used across your tenant. And then finally, as a first step in solving the conundrum of our content type syndication sucks in SharePoint Online, we hear you, and we are fixing it. The first step is with content type push. This is effectively the ability to take an enterprise content type and push it to a hub. So if you have a site designated as a hub, then what we're going to do is we're going to push that content type to that hub, and then it's going to be automatically applied to any new lists or libraries in the associated sites to that hub. I'm going to skip over this. I think you guys, for those of you who are joining, you're probably already on board. I don't need to convince you about the value of metadata and taxonomy and information protection labels, but clearly the benefit that we see here is really just, again, automating all of this really gives you guys that flexibility to take advantage of what the AI app models can do in terms of that classification, generating that metadata from the documents so that you can then just really start to improve the quality and consistency of your search results, any business process automations, and of course, just consistent compliance governing. So I'll talk a little bit about that one in a second. I don't remember if I have a demo set up for this at the moment. A bunch of my demos in the last week or two have been sort of reset. But with the MIP sensitivity and retention label, let me just talk about that one super quick. So as many of you know, if you start working with the information protection labels, you can define those things and define the classifiers to say, hey, if I have a certain content type, go and stamp it with a particular information protection label. We sort of are accelerating that, if you will, because when the work that we did there was currently with the retention label, we provide the retention label in a document understanding model as a setting. So if that retention label is defined in the Security and Compliance Center, and then it's published to the Content Center, you can use that retention label, apply it to a model. And so when that model gets applied to a library, what we do is we just accelerate that application or that stamping of that retention label. So what we'll do is at runtime, when that model runs against that uploaded file and we classify it, then we also will stamp it with that associated retention label. So it's not to displace or replace what the information protection scanning service does, but it can do it a lot quicker, right? It can do it at time of upload, And so there's that benefit of getting that retention label stamped on that file a little bit more quickly. The sensitivity label worked, different set of APIs. That work is not quite ready. We're hoping to ship it out sometime after the new year. But it will work similarly, where imagine being able to similarly apply a sensitivity label to a model so that it can also be stamped on that file when it gets classified. Okay, we're almost at looking at real software. One last slide just to kind of, and I think, I'll talk with you. I think we have a way to share some of these materials. A lot of this stuff has been shared in the tech community, some of the posts that Seth and Chris and others have shared, and I think even some stuff I've shared on Twitter, but I just wanted to sort of summarize that there's a bunch of pieces that are a part of the Syntex release, because I know, again, you guys have heard, like, wait, Cortex was being shipped, and then it was called Syntex, and then you released Syntex, and not Topics yet. Topics are coming later this year as a part of the Cortex initiative. So right now, the Syntex work, it just went live last month. There are trials available. Just to sort of head off a question that has come up. Part of the Syntex licensing is you get service credits for form processing if you have 300 or more seats. And that essentially is the equivalent of getting the AI Builder service credit capacity add-on. So you'll get 1 million credits each month. And if the trial licenses, because by default they only have 25 seats, just be aware that those don't come with credits. So if you don't already have credits, you won't be able to try out the form processing experience with the trial license. We are looking to see if there's some ways that we can, fix that by giving you like an amount of credits to try out that form processing experience. But just wanted to address that because that's come up in some of the community threads and discussions in the last couple weeks. A lot of stuff is available on the product page, including some fantastic documentation that we've put together. A lot of the documentation includes embedded videos that just kind of highlight some of the experience and the things that you can do with Syntex. And then, of course, for our virtual Ignite event back in September, we did a bunch of videos that kind of walk through both the general Syntex value proposition and where it sits in the broader Project Cortex initiative. But then we also did a bunch of drill downs. Myself and my engineering manager even do a whole session where we walk through the whole document understanding model building experience. I'll touch on some of that. We probably won't have time to walk through all of that in the remaining 15, 20 minutes, but I just wanted to let you guys know that there are a lot of great resources out there. And so if you haven't checked them out, please do. Feedback is always welcome. So if there's something that you think is incomplete or incomprehensible or missing, or it's awesome, we'd love to hear all of that feedback so that we can make sure that we're getting you guys the information you need to take advantage of this new product add-on. All right, I'm going to pause for a second because now I'm going to just jump to some working code and demo stuff. Is there any questions in the chat? Veso, or should I? A lot. Awesome.
Okay, so a few things. You kind of mentioned already the licensing. Can you just recap the licensing and costs related on this one?
Yes, I'm sorry. You know what? I think I put a licensing slide in here in case this came up. Yeah. Okay. So SharePoint Syntex licensing, there's more on the product page, by the way, that's going to do a much better job of explaining this than I do. I build the software, I don't license it or build the licensing plan. So my apologies if I'm trying to get more versed on some of the nuances here. But effectively, think of SharePoint Syntex as an add-on. Okay, so I believe that there was talk, maybe, just to keep ourselves honest here, we may have even mentioned at Ignite 2019 that this would probably be like an E3, E5 add-on. I'm sorry, included in E5 and available for E3 or whatever. It's a little bit more broad than that. Now it's just a general add-on. If you have pretty much any type of SharePoint enterprise license or commercial license or education license, you can add the SharePoint Syntex license. You'll see it in the add-on section of your Microsoft admin center, where you can purchase products and things like that. That's also where the trial will be. The plan is priced per user. It's $5 per user per month. If you have 300 or more seats, then you also get included in that purchase the AI Builder monthly credits of 1 million, and that gets it doesn't roll, so it gets reset at the beginning of each month. I think that's the standard way that capacity add-on works. And then there's these content connectors, which I'm not going to talk about today. Happy to do a follow-up with you guys with people who are more versed in the connectors than I am. But the Syntex licensing does include the ability to use the connectors and index a set number of items. And that amount is pooled by the number of licenses that you have in terms of the number of items that you can index. Let's see. Yeah,
there's a good follow-up from Mike related on that one. So is the licensing different for the person who's actually teaching versus the end user viewing the library?
Not at this time. No. Right now, we aren't doing any type of nuanced licensing enforcement. That might change in the future, but right now, no. Depending on the license, what the license is going to do is it's going to give you guys the ability to, here, let me just jump back up to this slide real quick. The administration, what it's going to do is it's going to light up the ability to configure Syntex. Is part of that configuration is you set up a default content center. By the way, content center is a admin site template, so you can make more. We got feedback from you guys and customers during development that you could imagine needing more than one content center, because we see it as both, it's probably going to evolve into something like a modern document center where it could be a destination portal, or it could be something where you want to set up different models and access to managing those models by department. So the HR content center versus the product marketing versus the operations. So you can create additional content centers through the admin SharePoint site creation experience. And then the site, there's also, I'll just mention here, you have the ability to set up where the form processing option shows up. So if you wanted to, it can be off for everybody, on for everybody, or you can restrict it to specific sites, almost like an access list. So then any library in that site, they'll get the affordance on that library ribbon to go and create those form processing models. But no, we are not, the main filter right now is we do a seat count to determine whether or not you get the additional AI Builder credits. Otherwise, you'll have to have those credits already. And if you have them, then you can obviously use them, or you'll have to buy, I think there's a separate license for the AI Builder capacity add-on.
Cool. The second, there's so many questions now. I'm coming. We'll follow up with some of this with Sean after the call as well. But second big set of questions is around the content type hub and the push on that one. The classic questions: will it only apply to new lists which have been associated on the sites which have been associated to a hub, or will it actually work for all existing lists as well?
So currently it only works on new lists and libraries, but since you asked, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you want it to be retroactive and apply to any existing lists and libraries? That is work that we are considering, but we are talking to customers. So yeah, if you can chime in on the value add of doing that, or would you want the ability to control how that works? That would be helpful to understand those use cases. But yeah, currently content type push only once it's pushed to a hub and it's synced down then to an associated site when you join the hub. It will only take effect on newly created lists and libraries.
Yeah, cool. Now there's yes on that one, but I think you have a demo waiting. So let's jump on the demo and we can come back to questions.
Okay, so I want to just fly through a bunch of things that now I just threw a bunch of words at you and some pretty PowerPoint slides, and let's just go see what some of this stuff starts to look like. And yeah, you know what? Let me see if I can, since I'm out of PowerPoint, sorry, 1 second. Let me just get out of that so then I can see questions in my other screen.
And also, how do we get this to an existing tenant? So how do we get started on the stuff? Or a trial?
Oh, the trial. So the trial, you should, in your existing tenant, you should be able to go into your Microsoft Admin Center where you can see all your licensed products. And I believe you have the ability to purchase other products there. There is, look for Syntex. It should be rolled out. And you should be able to either purchase seats or select a trial. And the trial is going to be a 25-seat trial for 30 days.
Cool.
Okay, so real quickly, you guys have probably seen some of this, but I'm just going to touch on some of the things that I talked about and just sort of help you connect the dots, because I think one of the things I was thinking about when I was talking with Vesa about, sharing with you guys kind of like an overview of Syntex, I wanted to give you a lot of that framing, because I've in my conversations with the community and threads that I'm seeing, there's still like people are trying to understand how to think about all these pieces and how they work and how they come together, and fully acknowledge that, there's some areas where we want to optimize this, and we're looking for parity of experience across these things. And, it's a bit, I'll be fully transparent with you guys. We do put a bit of that cognitive load on you where, you have to think about, wait a minute, which model type is the best for me? And so let me just kind of reiterate that one again, because I think it's also helpful to talk about, how do you think about Syntex? We have a TAP program that we've been working with some customers, and one of the things that has been helpful is to help people understand that Syntex doesn't, solve the entire business process. What it's intended to do is help solve pieces of it that then accelerate your productivity or allow you to, optimize those business processes so that, folks can do other things. And so one way that has been to think about it is, hey, if Syntex can help me do those things like classifying content consistently in my corpus, or extracting specific metadata that can then drive business processes, awesome. So then what you want to do is you want to think about, what are those business files in my corpus that need that type of attention, that need that type of consistency, that I need to get that entity data from, metadata from, so that I can drive those business processes or ensure that they get properly classified to comply with my governance file plan. And so thinking about that strategically as you go into this, I think helps put what Syntex can do in perspective. And then you can think about, okay, how am I supposed to, then I can focus on the thing where, the big piece of Syntex in this release is the ability to build these models and apply them to your SharePoint document libraries. So what I have on the screen here is a content center. It's not super jazzy yet. We're doing more things to it, but it's very exciting that this is the place where you build and manage not just your document understanding models, but if you create AI builder form processing models, we're going to roll up a reference to that in the central data, and we're building out some analytics so you can start to see like what models are being applied where, and not only that, given what library, where they're applied to, how many files are being processed. Because obviously, if you want to make this investment, you want to make sure that A, it's being used, and B, it's doing what you need it to do, and really helping automate those processes so that your folks can do the more interesting work. So in this, what's special about this site template is this is the place where these document understanding models are built and where all the model activity and usage is being centralized. And if you have multiple content centers, one of them is the default content center, and that's the one that all the roll-up model activity will occur. So we have a new model library, which is the place where you can create these models, these document understanding models. And you'll see here that there's this one called benefit change notice, and I have another model somewhere else here that I want you guys to see. I apologize, guys. I have so many windows open. Okay, I am not, I'll find that window. But when you're in the model, this benefit change notice, what this is this is a sample model. So when you create a new content center, you have you're going to see an affordance to import this model. And what it does is it activates this benefit change notice model. And what's helpful about this is one of the things we want to do is provide folks with lots of opportunities to understand and learn how to build these models and how to train them. And so what this does is when you instantiate this model in your content center, it's a fully functioning model. So it brings in all of the training files. It also brings in a bunch of entity extractors. Those are the things that are going to pull out specific information from the documents and write those to the corresponding SharePoint library columns. And so what you can do is you can use this model as a guide to understand what's happening. And so you can also interact with it. So you can see like, how was the classifier trained? And the classifier training experience, whether you're training the model to understand how to classify a benefit change notice from one that isn't, as well as from an extractor, is a pretty similar experience. The difference is that you're looking at the whole document rather than something in the document. So notice that the first step is to label. And so I've brought in a bunch of sample files here, and I'm just going to go ahead and label, yes, these are examples. This is an example of a benefit change document. And then if you have one that isn't, you're going to label it as not. And that negative example is super important. You need one. And this is important because it helps the model. This is where the human, come in to play when you're training the model. And this is also what kind of accelerates and facilitates the building of these models, is you know more than the model does. And one of the things you know is you know what a contract is and you know what a contract isn't. And so by giving a negative example, it really helps the model to very quickly understand how to identify, in this case, these benefit change notices. I'm going to jump back out to an extractor just so you can see what the extractors look like, because they're very similar in experience. In this case, these extractors, what they're doing is you're similarly, let's go get the date of change. How about that? So with the date of change, it's very similar. You're labeling the document, but instead of just doing a positive and negative, now what you're doing is you're actually highlighting the thing that you want to extract from this document. So in this case, there's a change note date in this document. And so I want to be able to identify it. And you'll see here, I can go ahead and remove that. But what you do is you just highlight it, and then that saves that label. And then you can move on to the next document. And then once you've labeled a sufficient number of documents, you move on to the training experience. And what's important about the training experience is it's largely driven by helping the model understand, A, how to identify that thing that you've labeled, that entity that you want to extract. And you can do that in one of two ways. You can do that by either giving it some list of values, some types of phrases or things that you know that the model is going to understand. And we have a couple of different explanation types. And so that phrase list, you can imagine, might be something like a list of things that you know that entity to be. And that helps the model understand not just those words, but even words like that. So it's almost like being very explicit. The other type of one that's super helpful is the pattern explanation. And the pattern explanation is where you're also telling that the model, training it to understand what type of entity this is. And this is particularly useful for things like if you've got an address or a phone number or a URL, or even in this case, a date. So you'll see here that if I look at this date one, what we're doing is we've defined this as a pattern. And you'll see that what we're doing is we're identifying all the variations of how a date might appear. And this helps the model understand how to identify this date of change that you want to extract. I also want to show you something else that's very cool about this to facilitate that, because you're probably going, man, that looks complicated, Sean. Well, we're trying to make it easier for you. And a couple ways that we do that is, one, we've given you a bunch of pre-built templates, these pattern, and in some cases, even some phrase list patterns and explanation types. And so you see these templates, what they do is they already have all the patterns laid out for you. And so what's nice is you can go ahead and add one of these, and then you can go and manipulate it. And even after you manipulate it and go ahead and apply it, let me go ahead and actually save this just so you can see that it's there. And then what I have the ability to do is I can also save this as my own template. So what we're giving you the ability to do is you can make your own explanations from blank. You can make them from one of our pre-built ones to kind of bootstrap, and then you can even save them. And once they're saved, those custom ones are going to show up in that list for other model creators. So you can really start to take advantage of, you reusing these explanations that are unique to your business files to, again, accelerate the creation and training of those models. And then once you do that, there's one other thing I wanted to point out here, is when you're also training these models, another option is, let's go to I want to take you to a different one so you can kind of see what this experience looks like. When you're training a model, you can also train the model to understand how to find that entity by the context. So let me show you an example of that. So in this case, I might be looking for something like, this is a contract here, and I have something like the company name. And if I go into the training, you'll see here that there's, in this case, I'm doing an explanation called prefix. And what prefix is doing is terms or has expired. Oops, sorry. So you'll notice here that what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the company name out of this contract. And I can actually build an explanation that helps the model understand where to find the company name. And these are very powerful explanations because they're helping the model understand context. And you typically only need like one or two of these to, again, just help the model understand how do I find the thing that you want me to extract, identify and extract. And then, you build those and you're off to the races. And once you have those, once you've kind of gone through this training experience on that set of labeled documents, you can finally go into the last experience where it's a test page. And so if you have other files that the model has not seen because you didn't label them, you can now run the model against those unlabeled, unseen files and see how well it does at predicting and finding the value that you're trying to extract. This is important because it helps you understand, hey, is my model fit and ready? And once it is, then you can go ahead and do things with that model. Oops, I jumped out. Oh, there's that thing where you can build that sample model. Let's jump back into that model for a second. Once you're ready with this model, you've trained it to classify these contracts and you've trained the right things you want to extract, then you can go ahead and apply it. And this is where you can select the library and apply it to that library. And then you'll have the option to jump to that library. And so you'll see here that once I've got that model applied to that library, now what it's going to do is it's going to do a bunch of things. It's going to light up this library to let the user know that, hey, there is a model applied to this library and some information about it. It's also going to create a view on that model. So what's really cool about this is when we create the model, you're creating a content type. And so when you apply that model to a library, what we're doing is we're applying that model and the associated content type to the library and creating a view for that model's content type so that you can then obviously see all the metadata associated with that model as it gets extracted. And so you'll see here that I've got files that I've uploaded. They've been classified as contract notice, and then all this information was extracted from that document. The other thing I want to point out here too is there's this thing called the classification date. Actually, let's jump to another library that I have here, just so you can kind of see what this is doing. Because I want to also illustrate something else that's happening here. With the classification date, what we do is, I don't know if you guys saw my Ignite 2019 talk, where we had the very earliest first prototype of this thing. And it was a lot of baling wire and duct tape. It was literally a lot of magic behind the scenes to make this thing work. And one of the things I wanted to do is illustrate for you guys that, hey, when you extract the metadata, I wanted to trigger a Power Automate flow to go and post something to a Teams channel based on, like in one case, it was like if the fee amount was over a certain amount of money. And the problem with that is you had to use the delay trigger. Well, that's really stupid because what if it takes a little bit longer, then your model, then your flow's never going to run. So what we did was we built a new action. We did a couple things. We built a new action. When the model is classified, what we do is we stamp the file in the library to let you know when it's been classified. And then we have a new action in Power Automate that allows you to build a flow off of that classification date, value. And so what you can do is you can wait until the model is done processing and then kick off the rest of your downstream flow. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I want to tell you guys one other thing real quick before I forget it. This contract services one, really important because I think I want to just stress again that a lot of the work that we're doing with Syntex is also associated with the investments that we're making in the managed metadata service. And this contract services field, for example, I've changed this model a few times, but on these two particular records, this is an actual managed metadata field. It is here, it's the contract services, and it's got a bunch of values here. And so what's very cool about this is you can actually, in this model, you can train an extractor using a managed metadata field. And then what will happen is when the document, in this case, look at Isaiah Langer, notice that the contract service value is design. Design is one of the preferred labels in this term set. And if you go to the document, the actual value that the model extracted was creative. Creative is a synonym of design. So what we'll do is when you run the model against this file, it's going to extract a value, and then we're going to match it to the associated term set. And if it matches either the preferred label or the synonym, we're going to write the preferred label into the column. So it's really giving you that ability to not only leverage the automation that the model provides, but ensure consistency by mapping it to a term set. Okay, one thing we did not get to touch on today, I knew we might run short on time, but I did just want to highlight for you guys that with the form processing stuff, it works similarly. And there's some interesting work that's also happening with the form processing that area is continuing to evolve, and Syntex users will get the benefit of those improvements. So in this case, you'll see that there's a new model compose feature or a collection feature, and you can read about it. The article's been updated. It's a group documents by collections. And what's powerful about this is, imagine if you're getting different receipts, different invoices from different shipping companies as your organization. And instead of having to build two models, if you know that you just want to pull the invoice ID and terms of laden from the document, what you can do is you can train a single model against these different types of invoices and extract the same metadata. And then when you do that, you can apply that same model back to the library. So notice I've got here two different types of invoices, PR Contoso, PO, and then these optical invoices. They both are laid out differently, but I needed the same information from them. And so I was able to essentially group these different training sets into different collections and then train a single model. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility with extending the power of a form processing model. Okay, again, lots of information. I knew this was going to happen. We were going to run out of time, but I did want to make sure that you guys know that we are here. We want you to, get familiar with this stuff, ask questions, share with us your use cases. There's a lot of information out on the product page and also in the tech community and also on the virtual hub. So please check that material out and let us know if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Sean. And I'll follow up with you with a few questions which we add on the video notes, which will hopefully go out tomorrow, so we can add them there, because there's quite a few questions going on the chat. One thing what I want to answer, even though we're 2 minutes over time, the multilingual support. Obviously, it supports multiple languages, not just English, because that came up with multiple likes on the chat as well.
Yeah, so the multilingual. So right now with form processing only supports English. You have a little bit more flexibility with the document understanding models. That tech is still technically only supporting English at this time, but there is a benefit in the sense that the way that the model does the processing, it's not really looking at words so much as it's looking at tokens. So it's looking at characters and arrangements of those characters. So yep. Some of the preview customers that we've worked with, as long as you were training files on Latin alphabet languages, so things like French and Italian, Spanish, German, except you might run into some issues with diacritics and things like that, they should work. But official support is just English only at this time, with a plan to support more languages in the coming year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that one. We got that one in the video as well. And we do apologize we didn't have a time to answer all of the questions, but we're trying to follow up on many of them in the video notes or the blog post, which is about this community call. So, but yes. Thank you, Sean, on that one.